This video is in collaboration with Epidemic Sound. Hello filmmaker, welcome back. If you're new, I'm Monica Bryant and this channel is a living document of my journey as a filmmaker. And today we are going to continue our deep dive into the Buffyverse. Next on the list is Buffy's unaired pilot that was never supposed to be leaked. Ooh. In part 1, we traveled down the tumultuous film that was Buffy the Vampire Slayer in 1992, the making of it, the cast, the crazy director, Fran Kuzui, who just had to have her way, even though her way wasn't the best way. And now we get into our unaired pilot. It was never supposed to be released. Joss Whedon had said in an interview with IGN, while there's air in his lungs, he was never going to release this pilot. Well, it was bootlegged, widespread, and now you can even watch it on YouTube. That's where I got it from. You can see how the pilot was going to shape into what the show became and the show we all know and love. You could see the beginnings of it in the pilot. There was just a couple of things they needed to tweak before they could get it right. I'll be covering all the major players in getting this show made, the cast, the crew, the plot, the cast that could have been. There was some shocking things that I discovered about the cast that are really fun nuggets that I didn't know before. And I pride myself in being somebody who's a diehard Buffy fan that knows everything, but even once in a while, there's things that I didn't know. But before we get into that, we're gonna have a quick word from our sponsor, Epidemic Sound. Are you a content creator that's looking for ways to monetize your content outside of YouTube AdSense? Then you should consider becoming an Epidemic Sound ambassador. Epidemic Sound is a global music tech company that enriches the creative process by enabling creators to elevate their content and engage their audiences with an ever-expanding catalog of world-class music and sound effects. They collaborate closely with content creators and musicians to help them grow. Epidemic Sound has an inviting user interface that's easy to use. You can search for tracks by emotion or mood, get recommendations based on what you've previously listened to, and save time by downloading tracks in stems. They've also introduced a new AI element called Sound Match that allows you to upload your video clips directly to their site and get unique soundtrack recommendations. Epidemic Sound is worry-free. You'll have access to 40,000 tracks and 90,000 sound effects without ever having to worry about licensing. Sign up for a 30-day free trial and you can publish your content anywhere online. When you join the community program, you can earn a free subscription to Epidemic Sound just by sharing your affiliate link. It's easy and convenient to keep track of your performance in the community space. And once you've referred 12 paying users, you upgrade your free subscription and earn revenue as an Epidemic Sound ambassador. You'll be invited to paid opportunities as well as VIP online and offline events. You'll earn cash for each paying user you refer. You can share your referral link with a unique playlist and download all of the assets and logos you need to get started. So what are you waiting for? Check out the link in my description for your 30-day free trial, and I encourage you to join the community program so that you can become an Epidemic Sound ambassador and earn that sweet, sweet cash. Now, back to the video. If you watched my first video, you know that I opened with a disclaimer about Joss Whedon and his allegations, and I would just like to extend that disclaimer onto this video as well. As I was searching for information about Buffy's unaired pilot and Buffy's beginnings and researching Joss Whedon, a lot of times Google will just default to all of his allegations and all the terrible things that he has allegedly done to people on and off set. And you know what? We are just going to have to once again separate the artist from their art. My next video will be a deep dive into Joss Whedon's fake feminism and his allegations. But until then, we are just going to separate the two so that we can get through this with the least amount of pain possible. So if you're a diehard Joss Whedon fan or you hate him, whatever the case may be, we're just not going to address any of that bad stuff today. So we have 4 major players when it comes to getting Buffy off the ground. We have Sandy Gallin, Gail Berman, Fran Kuzui, and Joss Whedon. Our story begins with a man named Sandy Gallin. Sandy began his career working in the mailroom at General Artists Corporation. He says, "I started in the mailroom. I became the head of the television department. I moved to California, running their music and television department, which is now ICM, and I became a personal manager. I brought the Beatles to the United States." Sandy is responsible for the Beatles' appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show in 1964. I mean, he's managed a lot of big names. Michael Jackson, also Dolly Parton, and he actually, in 1985, formed Sand Productions with Dolly Parton. So yes, Dolly Parton is part of the Buffy universe. Sand was the driving force to getting the original Buffy film in theaters in 1992. Sandy says, "I asked Gail Berman, who was running Sand Television, to please go through all of our inventory and see what we could turn into a television series. Gail came up with Buffy the Vampire Slayer." After graduating from the University of Maryland, Gail produced Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat at the Ford Theater in Washington, D.C. 9 months after it closed in Washington, it opened off Broadway, and 2 months later, it went to Broadway, so I was the youngest female Broadway producer. In 1989, Gail took a job at Comedy Channel, which is now Comedy Central, as a supervising producer over numerous shows, including Mystery Science Theater 3000. After her husband's career took him to California, Gail resigned and went to work for Sandler in Los Angeles. That's been my career in Los Angeles. One place. I started as the vice president and I became the CEO of the company, and then in June, I left just to do Buffy. Do things like this even happen anymore? I mean, people tell these stories of their lives and like, I started in the mailroom and then the next thing you know, I was the president of the company. Like, how do I get that trajectory? When Gail first came to Sand she read Joss Whedon's script and loved it, and they were already making the movie. Before the film was released, Gail went to Sandy Gallin and said, "I think this would make a great television series. I think we should sell it as a television series before the movie comes out." And Sandy told her it was a great idea to see if they could do that, and she called everybody she knew in town, and nobody was interested. Gail was disappointed, but a couple of years later, Fran Kuzui called her and expressed interest in trying to get the show made, and Gail responded, "Fran, nobody else is going to do this except me and you." They started working together. At this point, Gail had not even met Joss Whedon in person yet, but Sandler was contractually obligated to make him an offer. Joss Whedon's agent was convinced that Joss had ventured into movies because he did Alien Resurrection and he did Toy Story. So his agent was like, "I don't think he's going to want to come back to TV, but we'll see." His agent called back and told Gail that, in fact, Buffy is the only thing that Joss wanted to do. Gail said, "I met him, we hit it off very well, we had a very similar vision, and we went to go about selling it eventually. It was my idea to do this as a series, but it's his creation. Every single thing you see, every line you hear, it's him." And then we get to our good old pal, Fran Kuzui. Fran. Remember, she was the director of the 1992 film Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and she let the cast and crew do whatever they wanted, didn't give them any direction, let them do their own thing. Even though she claimed to have a clear vision, well, our good old buddy Fran had to eat crow. And for those of you young folks out there who might not know what eating crow means, it's when you have to go back and admit that you screwed up. This is what Fran had to say about the series. "The real challenge for me is to have made a movie that was perceived as not successful, and to pick myself up and not quit, to turn the creative focus of Buffy, the show, over to Joss Whedon and say, well, okay, I will enable Joss to express himself through the TV show is where the guts come in. That's what Buffy's about. Dealing with the consequences of what you do and moving on and not folding to the vampires, and the really important part, having the grace to say to Joss, this is yours now. The grace to say to Joss, I know you had an original vision. Let's go back to that. And let's make this TV show along the lines of what you wanted to do." When Joss was approached with all the ideas about getting the show made, he had this to say: "I thought about it, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized how many stories there were to tell and how excited I was. I was pretty much out of TV completely at that point, and my agent asked me, 'Now come on, really? What do you want to do?' I said, 'I'm already writing scenes for this in my head.'" Joss Whedon sat down with one of his friends. They were brainstorming ideas about high school being hell because the show was going to take place once again in high school. And he had to make up a reason why all these monsters and demons and whatever would just be attacking this one school. So he decided that the school was on top of a hellmouth, and basically the hellmouth radiates this energy that attracts vampires and demons and otherworldly creatures. So it was the perfect excuse to make high school hell, to make it relatable to people at the time, myself included, because high school was definitely hell for me, and a great idea was born. The WB wanted to rename the show. They thought Buffy the Vampire Slayer was a really stupid title. Gail Berman recalled, "They had a lot of different ideas, none of which we were interested in. Now, of course, it seems fine because everybody calls it that. But at the time, their research told them that the title was a killer. Definitely don't call it Buffy." Well, the WB lost that fight. In the mid-90s, the WB was home to a lot of black TV shows such as The Wayans Brothers, Parenthood. They also had Sister Sister, Unhappily Ever After, a show called Muscle, some other shows. And in Cynthia Burkhead's 2011 book, Joss Whedon, it's basically a compilation of interviews that he's done. Joss revealed that Buffy the Vampire Slayer soon became one of the fledgling WB's biggest and most reliable hits. So the network was dying, they weren't doing great, and Buffy saved them. Like Brenda Hampton's Seventh Heaven and Kevin Williamson's Dawson's Creek, Buffy would help balance out its mostly young, mostly African-American programming with a mix of dramas that could attract more broad-based demographics. That is a quote directly from that book. When I read that, I was just a little bit sad because I remember being a kid and watching the Wayans Brothers and Sister Sister and The Parenthood, and I really liked those shows. So to hear that the network was dying while they were showing those just makes me really sad for the state of black entertainment, but whatever. In 2006, the WB and UPN, which was at the time United Paramount Network, combined forces to become the CW, and we all know what kind of shows they make. So when it comes to our title character, Buffy Summers, Natasha Lyonne was the first actress to be offered the role of Buffy, but she turned it down. She wasn't interested in doing a show like Buffy. She wanted to do a Carol Burnett style comedy sketch show, and she didn't want to commit to a role like Buffy because she was 16 at the time. She was really young and it was a big commitment, so she turned it down. And I don't know, I'm trying to think of like Natasha Lyonne as Buffy. I can kind of understand why they'd approach her because she's got that like kind of tough girl thing going on. Katie Holmes was offered the role, but she turned it down because she was in high school herself and she was putting her education first. I respect that. Selma Blair auditioned for the role of Buffy, but the schedule didn't work out. She ended up starring in the 1999 film Cruel Intentions alongside Sarah Michelle Gellar, and the two of them have been best friends ever since. Charisma Carpenter, Julie Benz, Mercedes McNabb, Julia Lee, and Elizabeth Ann Allen all auditioned for the role of Buffy, but ended up playing other characters. Cordelia Chase, Darla, Harmony Kendall, Lily, Amy Madison, respectively. Just because you didn't get the lead role didn't necessarily mean you were out.
Casting Buffy was extremely difficult. Sarah came in to read for the part of Cordelia and actually got the part. And it was the network who said, well, she's wonderful, why don't we see if she can do Buffy? And the moment she read for it, it was clear that, we'd found her.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Sarah Michelle Gellar was going to be Cordelia. Like, she was Cordelia. But, you know, you heard the man. Ryan Reynolds almost played Xander. Yes, we almost got Ryan Reynolds, ladies and gentlemen. In an interview in 2008, he said, "I didn't want to play a guy in high school. I had just come out of high school and it was fucking awful." That's what he said. I agreed. High school was bad. Danny Strong auditioned for the role, but he lost to Nicholas Brendan. No worries, because he shows up in multiple episodes as Jonathan Levinson. This blew my mind. So Melanie Lynskey was the person that Joss Whedon wanted. She couldn't audition for the role because she's from New Zealand and she was having visa problems. And she also had reservations about doing TV. She had a really old school agent at the time, and her agent was like, "TV is for has-beens, you don't want to do TV." And Melanie was like, "I'm not really sure. I don't think, people are looking at TV like that anymore." But she stayed in touch with Joss and she offered to read again. And then when they decided to recast Riff Regan, that's when they had her read. She ended up auditioning, but was told by her agent, "Oh, they didn't like what you were wearing." And then that's when Allison Hannigan ended up getting the part after Riff Regan. When I first watched the pilot and I saw the girl that they cast as Willow for the first time, I couldn't really understand it. I didn't really get what they were going for. But now, knowing that he really wanted Melanie Lynskey, I can see how Riff Regan kind of resembles Melanie Lynskey at that time. So that made sense. But, Riff just couldn't carry the role. And I'm sure she's a really sweet person, and the stuff that she's doing in her life seems really cool, but she just wasn't Willow. She just wasn't Willow, I'm sorry. Bianca Lawson, who comes back to play Kendra, she was offered the role of Cordelia, but she had a scheduling conflict and couldn't do it. Can you imagine, Bianca Lawson would have killed that role. She would have been the perfect mean girl. I think she's in Save the Last Dance, and she's, really mean to Julia Stiles.
You know Diggy, right, Marsha?
Sarah. It's Sarah, actually. I know you, though. You're in my gym class, right?
That don't mean you know me.
She would have been a really great mean girl. Angel. So the role of Angel almost went to Nathan Fillion. He did return later in the series. We'll talk about that at some point. But he's in Firefly and Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog. Also, they did cast David Boreanaz in the unaired pilot, and he pretty much does the same scene that he has in Welcome to the Hellmouth, but it got cut for time. Sarah Michelle Gellar was born in 1977 in Long Island, New York, and she's an only child like me. She grew up in Manhattan, attended the professional children's school, and started appearing in commercials at the age of 4 years old. She was even sued by McDonald's for allegedly dissing their food in a Burger King commercial.
A regular hamburger is only 39 cents at Burger King. Only 39 cents for a burger. I wonder why.
Nicholas Brendan, cast as Alexander Harris, or Xander Harris. He also has a twin brother named Kelly. He was born and raised in Granada Hills, California, and his dream was to play baseball, and that's what he did at College of the Canyons. That dream ended when he broke his arm in a way that would impact his ability to play the game, and he went on to do TV commercials, and he worked behind the camera as a production assistant on a series called Dave's World, and he snagged a recurring role on The Young and the Restless and a lead in a pilot called Secret Lives. He was a guest on Married with Children, and he also played a homicidal little boy in Children of the Corn 3 Urban Harvest. Then came Buffy, and this is what he had to say. "I met with casting director Marcia Schulman. She called me back that same day. I met Joss and Gail and did my thing and got a phone call about an hour later saying that I was going to Fox to test. I went to Fox, was very nervous and tested. They allowed me to go to Warner Brothers the following Monday, and there was 2 of us, and on Tuesday I found out I got the role." Riff Regan was born in Monterey, California in 1975. Her acting career began in 1991, spanning nearly a decade as she scored roles on TV shows and made-for-TV movies. I have never seen her in anything else Buffy could have potentially been a breakout role for her, but things didn't work out. According to the trivia section of Riff's IMDb page, she retired from the entertainment industry in 2003, lived in Boston, Massachusetts, and worked at a startup out of Harvard University as of 2013. It also mentions she worked as a director of operations of accounting and human resources for a nonprofit HIV/AIDS organization in Washington, D.C. So she's out there doing the Lord's work. Good for her. Charisma Carpenter was cast as Cordelia Chase. She was born and raised in Las Vegas, Nevada until the age of 15, and then she moved to Mexico with her family. She would commute back and forth from Mexico to San Diego for school until the time she moved to Los Angeles full-time. She was working in restaurants, and she worked as an aerobics instructor. In San Diego, she was also a cheerleader for the San Diego Chargers at the time. And then she moved to Los Angeles. Every time she would encounter people, they would ask her if she was an actress or a model, and she was not acting or modeling at that time, but people just kept encouraging her to do those things. So she started training and got an agent and started going on auditions. She did some commercials and stuff. And then she had the audition for Buffy. So she went out for Buffy. She was wearing overalls and like some bright orange flip-flops and just kind of like, you know, whatever. And after she read, they told her, now we want you to read for Cordelia. And she was not prepared to read for Cordelia. So she had 15 minutes to go outside, scramble together a performance, and then she went back in and did it. And then they called her back and they were like, you did great, we want you to do a screen test. So at the time she was doing a Malibu Shores show. So she's in Malibu and she had to go all the way to Burbank for the audition. There was traffic, it was raining. Her agent calls and she's like, hey, where are you? They're gonna leave. And she was like, you better tell them to order a pizza because I didn't drive all this way to not even get in the room. So she got there super late and auditioned for the role of Cordelia and landed the role. You could be late to an audition and still get the part if you're that bitch. Anthony Stewart Head, or Anthony Stewart Head, cast as Rupert Giles. He was actually the very first person to get cast. Marcia Schulman mentioned that they weren't necessarily going for a British guy, but he came in and then it just worked. So he already had a lot of performances and stuff under his belt. He was born to a documentary filmmaker father and an actress mother in Camden Town, London, and he knew he wanted to be an actor from a very young age. He said, when it's in your family, it's a choice, it's there. So maybe he's a Nepo baby, but nobody cares if you're a Nepo baby if you're actually talented or if you're not problematic. In London, he was famous for his coffee commercials. They're a little suggestive. I was looking at them on YouTube and I was like, these are really steamy coffee commercials, but okay. He made his television debut on Enemy at the Door as Clive Martell of the Island Resistance, gained wide recognition for those coffee commercials, and in 1990 he played Frankenfurter in the West End revival of Rocky Horror Picture Show. I love Rocky Horror Picture Show, it's so fun. His rendition of Sweet Transvestite was released in 1991 as a single by Chrysalis Records, but you can YouTube it, it's great. Julie Benz, cast as Darla, originally went out for the role of Buffy, but she was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, graduated from Franklin Regional High. Her mother was a figure skater, and her father was a surgeon. She started ice skating when she was 3 years old. She competed in the 1988 U.S. Championships in junior ice dancing and finished in 13th place. At age 14, she suffered a stress fracture in her right leg, and then by 1989 she moved on to try acting. Her acting coach was rude, okay? Her coach at the time told her that she would never succeed as an actress because she has a horrible voice. And so Julie was like, okay, well, I'll show you, and became that bitch. You know, like, if you're that bitch, you are just that bitch. She got involved in community theater where she was cast in Street Law. She started booking roles in movies and TV shows. In 1996, she auditioned for Buffy, but ended up getting the role as Darla, and it was a recurring role. So they would bring her back to do the period episodes, and she was really excited to do that. So I think in the end, she showed that acting coach. Then we have Stephen Tobolowsky. Is it Tobolowsky? Tobolowsky? Stephen Tobolowsky?
Actor Stephen Tobolowsky.
They cast him as Principal Flutie, which is ridiculous, but he was recast with Ken Lerner because he had a prior commitment to ABC's The Pretender, and Joss Whedon had convinced him to do the pilot, but he wasn't available after that. Tobolowsky told the AV Club, well, the series for ABC, I believe, lasted for 9 shows, whereas Buffy the Vampire Slayer lasted for years. It could have made life so much sweeter through difficult times to have a steady paycheck, but that's the way the chips roll. But like, Steven, did you watch the first season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer? Because Ken Lerner only makes it to 6 episodes because he gets eaten by a group of students that are possessed by hyenas. So I really don't think Steven watched the show. Nicole Bilderback plays an unnamed Cordette, but her familiar face popped up in lots of movies and TV shows in the 90s. I personally remember her as Summer in Clueless. She was also in the Clueless TV show, which wasn't as good, but I watched it anyway. Nicole was born in Seoul, South Korea, but she was raised in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Dallas, Texas when she was adopted by a couple from the States. She was a cheerleader in high school and attended the Dallas Young Actors Studio. Nicole knew she wanted to be an actress. That's all she wanted to do, and she knew that she was meant to do that. She moved to Los Angeles and she worked as a hostess at Jerry's Famous Deli while going on auditions. This really stupid thing happened where an unnamed Asian actress sued IMDb for revealing her age, and for some reason everybody thought it was Nicole. Even her manager thought she did it and called to ask her if she was the one behind it, and she made a sketch with Funny or Die where everyone's accusing her of suing IMDb, and she's just like, guys, it wasn't me, I didn't do it. But that incident made her really popular on IMDb. She was ranking really high, so all press is good even if it's bad. When I think of Mercedes McNabb, I just think of Addams Family Values. I think of Harmony as the adult version of Amanda. I also didn't know that Mercedes McNabb was Canadian. She was born in Vancouver, British Columbia, and she got her first role playing the Girl Scout in the first Addams Family movie. She appears in 16 episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and she reprised her role on Angel after appearing in a few more TV shows and as the lead in Hatchet and a little part in Hatchet 2. She retired from acting in 2011, which I also didn't know, so I guess that makes sense why I haven't seen her in anything in a long time. Persia White and Amy Chance play Aura and Aphrodisia, and the only reason I'm bringing them up is because their scene makes it from the unaired pilot to Welcome to the Hellmouth. We have Persia White, who was born in the Bahamas. She's most famous for being Lynn Searcy on Girlfriends, and Amy Chance decided to stop acting to become a makeup artist. That's my cat, Gemini. Amy Chance became a makeup artist to the stars. She's responsible for Lily Allen's winged makeup look. She wrote a beauty blog and did some hosting for TV shows like E.T. on MTV. Contributed to some style magazines, so she's doing her thing. Then we have Danny Strong, who was cast as Jonathan Levinson. He doesn't have a really big role in the pilot. He just has one little scene where he asks Buffy, oh, are you the new girl? And that's it. But Danny Strong was born in Manhattan Beach, California, and he studied film and theater at USC. When he was a kid, he rented movies from video archives, and he was friends with Quentin Tarantino, who worked there as a clerk, and him and Quentin became friends, and they would talk a little bit, and Quentin would recommend all these movies, and that's when Danny kind of realized he wanted to be an actor, so he went out, started acting, got some parts. He got the part in Buffy, he got a part in Gilmore Girls as Doyle Master. And once Buffy wrapped, he switched gears and started screenwriting, and at 25 years old, he wrote Recount, that starred Kevin Spacey, and that's a movie about the 2000 US elections. produced by HBO and directed by Jay Roach. And he has gone on to write so many movies and TV shows. He did The Butler, he did Empire. He's doing stuff all the time. Like, he's killing it in the writing game, so good for him. Joss wrote and directed this 25.5-minute presentation pilot. The pilot was produced by Fox. It's basically the product that they use to pitch the series to networks. After Fox and NBC passed, the WB welcomed the show with open arms. It should be noted that presentation pilots are not an unusual thing. A lot of TV shows had them, like The Big Bang Theory has a pilot presentation, 30 Rock. A lot of shows have these unaired pilots, but no unaired pilot is as popular as Buffy's unaired pilot. There isn't one that is more widespread or bootlegged. So we win, bitches. Our story begins with an establishing shot of Berryman High School at night. A young couple breaks in through a window. The young girl asks,
"Are you sure this is a good idea?"
And the young guy replies,
"It's a great idea."
He leads her to the school's theater where he pushes a stray button that opens up the orchestra pit with a crash. Very romantic. She thinks she hears a noise and looks around. He convinces her no one is there, and once she's comfortable, she reveals her true vampire face and claims his blood. Cut to exterior, Berryman High, day. The title of the show is plastered across the screen, and we watch students flock onto campus accompanied by the high-energy 90s rock song Salvation by Rancid. Already, it sounds like something you'd hear playing at the Bronze, but it's far from Buffy's iconic intro music. Immediately, the camera pans down to Sarah Michelle Gellar's miniskirt and legs for no reason, but I swear I'm not complaining. She's blowing bubblegum and looking obviously like the new kid on campus. Buffy is escorted through the halls by Principal Flutie, and he has a problem getting her name right. He keeps calling her Bunny for some reason.
I don't think you'll have any problem adjusting, Bunny.
Buffy.
He's so ridiculously aloof and has no idea about Buffy's past. At least that's how he comes off. In fact, she's the one who brings it up.
Principal Flutie.
Betty?
I just want you to, Buffy, to know that I'm not here to cause trouble. There's not going to be any incidents like at my old school.
And then we meet Willow, Riff Regan's version of Willow. The thing about her that doesn't quite work is that she's just too matronly. She looks like she could be a teacher at the school, but portrays the role like a sad puppy dog.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I kind of had a problem with the math.
Which part?
The math. Can you help me out in third period, please? Be my study buddy.
What's in it for me?
A shiny nickel.
Okay.
I don't mean to rag on Riff, I really don't, but I can understand why they decided to recast the role. Where Allison Hannigan was perky and enthusiastic, Riff was stiff and melancholy. Xander begs Willow to help him with his math, and then we meet Cordelia and her Cordettes, rude and vapid as ever, slinging insults at anyone unlucky enough to cross their path.
Willow, nice dress. Good to know you've seen the softer side of Sears.
Buffy stumbles into Xander's back. After an awkward encounter, he directs her to the library and notices she dropped her stake. At the library, Buffy meets Giles. She's looking for textbooks for classes, but Giles drops the vampire book on the desk.
That's not what I'm looking for.
Are you sure?
I'm way sure.
My mistake.
Buffy freaks out and leaves. In history class, Buffy meets Willow when she offers to help her get caught up. Buffy asks Willow about the new librarian when Cordelia and her clones pop up to steal Buffy away. We transition to the girls' locker room where Aura and Aphrodisia gossip about Buffy's reputation. But a dead body falls out of Aura's locker, crashes through her last sentence, and sends her screaming into panic. Xander finds Buffy in the halls and asks her about the stake and delivers his really little fence line.
I've been trying to work this out, and all I can figure is that you're building a really little fence.
Then he gives her a tour of all the different cliques on campus. It's such a late 90s, early 2000s trope of high school movies and TV. Willow tells Buffy and Xander that someone was found dead in the locker rooms. Cordelia and the gang show up to add some gossipy details, and Buffy freaks out and excuses herself, which Cordelia seems to take personally and somehow thinks is weirder than a dead guy in the girls' locker room.
I got a book. I'll see you guys later, okay? Okay.
Buffy runs into Principal Flutie again, who still can't get her name right.
Principal Flutie?
Bambi. Betty. Betty? Wilma?
Buffy.
And starts talking to her about the dead guy unprovoked, ending with, if there's anything that you need, and Buffy just point blank asks to look at the body, which he allows her to do. Like, what?
If there's anything that you need.
Can I look at the body?
I always thought the scene in Welcome to the Hellmouth where Buffy breaks into the lockers to check the body was unrealistic, but this scene makes that one look like CSI. Once Buffy's worst fear is confirmed about the dead body, she bursts into the library to confront Giles about vampires being on campus. Buffy refuses her duties as Slayer and does a backflip off the spiral staircase for no reason. It looks cool, but... why? Then Giles keeps trying to convince her to accept her fate because there's more to worry about than just vampires. Buffy then makes some valid points about how much being the Slayer sucks and how she has to make all these sacrifices, doesn't even get paid for it. High in the stacks though, Xander is listening in on the conversation.
Okay.
Cut to the Bronze. We see a poster for Oz's future band, Dingoes Ate My Baby. Buffy joins the line behind an innocuous Jonathan Levinson. Xander pops up and tries very unsubtly to ask about Buffy's past, but the conversation shifts to Willow and how she went off with some guy. The writing definitely takes a fumble here. In Welcome to the Hellmouth, the only reason Willow goes off with the vampire is because Buffy encourages her to do so after she reveals that she has a crush on Xander, but Xander is not picking up on it. Buffy tells her, seize the moment. So Willow seizes the moment and goes off with a vampire. When Buffy finds out that Willow went off with a vampire, she feels completely responsible and launches into action to save her. I cannot suspend enough disbelief to accept that Riff Regan's Willow went wandering off with some guy. She even delivers the line,
I don't usually do this sort of thing. I don't usually get asked.
And her performance is so cringe because she's still doing the sad puppy self-deprecating thing. And of course, the guy reveals himself to be a vampire. Shocker. Buffy and Xander hear Willow screaming and Buffy explodes into the auditorium to rescue her with all her spunk and Spider-Man inspired one-liners.
So what is it with vampires and clothes? You always think the march of fashion stopped dead the day you did.
It turns out Willow's vampire date isn't alone and Buffy has to spring into fight mode. She stakes one of them and then we get to see a primitive version of the vampire dusting effect. It's not great, but it's something. And then Darla shows up again and tries to bite Xander, but Willow saves him with a crucifix. Buffy falls into the orchestra pit because someone was bound to, and she fights off the last vampire, thus accepting her role as a slayer and solidifying her friendship with Xander and Willow.
I cannot believe that the fate of the world may well be in the hands of this teen thing.
Relax. The world's in beauty hands. Trust me.
Some notable differences in Welcome to the Hellmouth. Well, for one thing, they changed the name of the school. Berryman High School? Ew. Sunnydale is much better. Their mascot is the Razorbacks. They don't even mention the mascot in this pilot. The spiral staircase, they got rid of that. They scrapped that. They opened up the space, added the double doors, and made it, a little bit bigger and more inviting. We don't really see the inside of the Bronze, but they do show it in Welcome to the Hellmouth. And then the final showdown happens in the school's auditorium or theater rather than happening at the graveyard. As a diehard Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan, watching the Unaired pilot is a special treat for me because it's, I get this glimpse into the beginnings. I get to see the birth of the show, and that's the part that excites me about watching the Unaired pilot. witnessing something special and seeing the potential that the show had. Most of the characters were already taking shape, and all it needed was a polished script and a little bit of recasting. Join me next time where we'll take a break from the series and we'll talk about Joss Whedon's antics. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your other diehard Buffy fans. And if any of you are planning to check out the new Slayers audio book that they did, it came out like on the 12th or something, and they have a few people from the original cast like Charisma Carpenter and I think James Marsters, and the guy who played Clem is in it, I think. So if any of you have checked that out, let me know in the comments below. I have not checked it out, so please keep your spoilers to yourself. I do intend on listening to it. I just haven't had the time yet because I'm growing a baby in my stomach. Yeah, did I mention that I was pregnant? I think I might have mentioned that I was pregnant, but my stomach is really huge because there's a baby in there. So even if you don't send a like for the video, send a like for my child. All right, guys, I will see you in the next one. Bye.